Welcome to my home. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us as we continue our study of the Doctrine and Covenants today. Today we're going to be studying sections 98 to 101. We encourage you to get your scriptures out, your pens, papers, cell phones, iPads, whatever it is that will help you have an effective study of these doctrines and principles. Today we're going to study specifically three topics: the Constitution and freedom of religion, prophets see around corners, and embracing the unexpected. We're so excited to study with you. Welcome to Grounded, where women and men of all ages, nationalities, and backgrounds gather together with me, Barbara Morgan Gardner, and my guests as we strive to gain a bedrock understanding of the life and teachings of Jesus Christ and become more like him. Religious freedom and the Constitution are two extremely important topics, yet are often misunderstood. These topics, however, are very important for sections 98 to 101. Our prophets, seers, and revelators have spoken of these topics in detail and have asked us, as women and men of the church, to be able to understand the principles associated with these topics and also to teach them, speak them, and live them. Because of that, I want to spend a little bit of time on my own discussing religious freedom and the Constitution. After I finish this discussion, I'm going to invite my friend, Julene Judd, to discuss with me two other important topics found in these sections. When you think of Jackson County, Missouri, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, what do you think of? For many of us, there are two components: building Zion and the temple, and persecution. In August of 1833, the prophet was living in Kirtland, Ohio, nearly 900 miles from Jackson County, Missouri. W. Phelps, among other church leaders, were hated by individuals, and mobs were in the surrounding area. Many in this area, especially those who had been there for years, felt very threatened by members of the church now moving in. They were having issues related to politics, slavery, finances, and other topics that were hard for these original Missourians to deal with. We now had members of the Church of Jesus Christ coming in. They were coming from the north, moving to the south. This was right previous to the Civil War. There was major contention going on between these two groups of people. On July 20th, 1833, W. Phelps and other church leaders were finally called upon by the local mobs to leave the city or be destroyed as a people. Phelps asked for 30 days to get the word to the prophet, but the mob instead gave him 15 minutes. Phelps and other church leaders could not believe the request, nor could they agree to it. They had moved there from a variety of places and sacrificed much, if not all, that they had. These people, according to section 97, were meek and humble. They sought diligently to learn the wisdom and to find the truth. These were not a people of real threat, but yet to the Missourians they were. The saints believed that they had been called of God to establish Zion. They felt that they were to build a temple and that they were to build a school, and there they would bring in the second coming of Jesus Christ. As a result of their determination not to leave, these saints indeed suffered horrible consequences. Bishop Edgar Partridge was tarred and feathered. Vienna Jacks was threatened that more would happen to her and the saints in the future. The printing press in the house of W. Phelps was destroyed. The Book of Mormon pages were thrown. Many saints suffered increased and extreme persecution. With all the saints had been given, they knew that they needed help. Well, what kind of help should they have been given? What were the laws of the land at that time? In our day, we know that they were missing something that was extremely important: a law and an understanding of the Constitution. They were also missing the principles related to religious freedom. I remember my mom, when I was a child, bringing us all to knock doors so that we could help our neighbors and those in our community understand the laws of God and talk to them about some of the unfair or unjust principles and laws that were being passed. I remember my mother making phone calls constantly and consistently, especially around election time, to help people vote for and raise and bring in moral citizens. In fact, in section 98 of the Doctrine and Covenants, we are told by the Lord, "I, the Lord God, make you free. Therefore you are free indeed, and the law also makes you free. Nevertheless, when the wicked rule, the people mourn. Wherefore honest men and wise men," and I would add women, "should be sought for diligently, and good men and women, and wise men and women, ye should observe to uphold. Otherwise, whatsoever is less than these cometh of evil." This idea of religious freedom and in being able to vote for and have righteous people lead our country is absolutely important. Just the idea and the ability and the availability of us being able to vote is also extremely important. I remember again as my mother was on hospice near the end of her life, not being able to find her. She was passing away of brain cancer. Yet we actually found her on the way down the hill in her wheelchair, going to the elementary school so that she could cast one final vote before she passed away. Religious freedom was extremely important to her. The Constitution was extremely important to her. She knew that her children and her grandchildren and future generations and those she loved needed religious freedom. As an educator, especially with a focus on international education, and as a religious professor, I have come to see clearly the importance of religious freedom. I have traveled and spent time in China and Africa and South America and Europe and Australia. I have served as a chaplain in higher education throughout the world, but for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I have met with and visited with university chaplains and chaplains in the military and other areas. I have spent time especially with chaplains at Harvard and at MIT. I understand with them how important it is for us to be able to teach and live according to the dictates of our conscience. I remember talking with my colleagues at Harvard and MIT, and specifically at Harvard, describing to other chaplains, especially one of my Jewish friends, how important it is that we give respect to other people of other faiths. I love this quote by the prophet Joseph Smith. "The saints can testify whether I am willing to lay down my life for my brethren. If it has been demonstrated that I have been willing to die for a Mormon, I am bold to declare before heaven that I am just as ready to die in defending the rights of a Presbyterian, a Baptist, or a good man, and I would add women, of any other denomination. For the same principle which would trample upon the rights of Latter-day Saints would trample upon the rights of the Roman Catholics or any other denomination who may be unpopular and too weak to defend themselves." I would also add that Joseph Smith would die for a Muslim, a Buddhist, any other culture, any other religious denomination, any other person. Joseph Smith was someone, as leader of this church, like President Nelson is today, who would give his life to make sure that all are given freedom, an opportunity to flourish. I remember being with Elder Quentin L. Cook and other BYU religion professors, as well as rabbis and other leaders of the Jewish faith, as leaders of both the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, specifically Elder Cook, and leaders of the Jewish community, worked together to help us understand the importance of religious freedom. It was a powerful experience to be sitting in that room, looking over Jerusalem and especially Gethsemane, and have a conversation with a Jewish rabbi and our apostle. As a youth, I was immersed and struck by the unfair treatment of people, and doing so according to what they thought was the law. I soaked myself in books as a child, focused on underprivileged or marginalized people. I read books about the Holocaust, the Gulag Archipelago, and civil rights. It is absolutely our responsibility as members of this church to help all people have the religious freedom and the ability to grow and become what the Lord would have them to become, to fulfill the measure of their creation. President Dallin H. Oaks said the following regarding the Constitution. Section 101 of the Doctrine and Covenants speaks often and much about the Constitution. And he said this: "A constitution is the foundation of government. It provides structure and limits for the exercise of government powers. The United States Constitution is the oldest written constitution still in force today. Though originally adopted by only a small number of colonies, it soon became a model worldwide. Today, every nation except 3 have adopted written constitutions." Then specifically about the United States Constitution, as found and discussed in Section 101, he said the following: "The United States Constitution is unique because God revealed that he established it for the rights and protection of the flesh." In Section 101, verse 77, it reads the following: "According to the laws and the Constitution of the people, which I have suffered to establish, and should be maintained for the rights and protection of all flesh, according to just and holy principles." President Oaks then asks, what was God's purpose in establishing the United States Constitution? He answers, "We see it in the doctrine of moral agency. In the first decade of the restored church, its members on Western frontier were suffering private and public persecution. Partly this was because of their opposition to human slavery, then existing in the United States. In these unfortunate circumstances, God revealed through the prophet Joseph Smith eternal truths about his doctrine." Continuing in Section 101 of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 78, we read, that every man may act in doctrine and principle pertaining to futurity, according to the moral agency which I have given unto him, that every man may be accountable for his own sins in the day of judgment. Verse 79, therefore it is not right that any man should be in bondage one to another. President Oaks continues, our belief that the United States Constitution was divinely inspired does not mean that divine revelation dictated every word and phrase, such as provisions allocating the number of representatives from each state or the minimum age of each. We do, however, have a Constitution which gives us important principles to live by. President Oaks again gives 5 important principles of the Constitution. First, he says, is the principle that the source of government power is the people. Second, is the division of delegated power between the nation and subsidiary states. Third, the separation of powers. Fourth, the cluster of vital guarantees of individual rights and specific limits on government authority in the Bill of Rights. Without the Bill of Rights, America could not have served as the host nation for the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, which began just 3 decades later. And finally, President Oaks says, I see divine inspiration in the vital purposes of the entire Constitution. We are to be governed by law, he says, and not by individuals. And our loyalty is to the Constitution and its principles and processes, not to any office holder. In this way, all persons are equal before the law. In our day and age, it is extremely important to understand that we really do believe in the rule of law. It is important that all of us, every person on this earth, especially here in the United States, but throughout the world, has a law. And most of these laws that are most important are God's laws. But each country has laws that we, if we are people and we are people of God, must abide by. No one is above the law. President Oaks then says the following, despite the divinely inspired principle of the United States Constitution, when exercised by imperfect mortals, their intended effects have not always been achieved. Important subjects of lawmaking, such as laws governing family relationships, have been taken from the states by federal government. There are also threats that undermine the inspired principles of the United States Constitution, President Oaks declares. The stature of the Constitution is diminished by efforts to substitute current societal trends as the reason for its founding instead of liberty and self-government. The authority of the Constitution is trivialized when candidates or officials ignore its principles. The dignity and force of the Constitution is reduced by those who refer to it as a loyalty test or a political slogan, instead of its lofty status as a source of authorization for and limits on government authority. Long story short, with all of this, I want to come forward and just simply say that I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. It is a divine document. It is incumbent upon us as members of the church and as women of the church to understand the principles associated with this important document. I love a recent talk given by President Camille Johnson in Brussels, Belgium, on March 8th, on Women's Day. She said, religious freedom of women is a key component to global peace. She continued, I believe that women have been blessed with a unique moral compass, quoting President Nelson, and continues, and that women possesses spiritual gifts and propensities to sense human needs, to comfort, teach, and strengthen. Accordingly, each of our communities depend upon ordinary women for human flourishing as they perform their unique roles as leaders, teachers, nurturers, healers, and peacemakers. Then she says this, if ordinary women are to accomplish their unique daily peacemaking roles, they themselves need to be inspired, nurtured, healed, empowered, and taught about their divine potential. This wellspring will come from their ability to seek daily, if not hourly, inspiration in the way their conscience dictates. They must be able to live according to their highest aspirations and values, and to gather, share, and organize for mutual support. This, of course, is what robust freedom of religion and belief affords. The assurance to women, men, and children that they can live conscientious moral lives with mutual support to fellow believers while affording that same dignity to their neighbors. Then she asks us to imagine what would happen if every woman felt empowered within her sphere to live out the full measure of her spiritual gifts and propensities for nurture, care, healing, teaching, and leading. Imagine what would happen if we as women in leadership roles could unleash the full power of women to transform their personal inspiration into an organized action. What could happen in homes, schools, and congregations, in communities, and in nations? What would happen with efforts in poverty, eliminate hunger, assure public health, provide education, and reduce inequalities? And imagine the opposite. A reality in far too many communities, a world where women live in fear of social persecution and official restrictions stifle their expressions of conscientious belief and prevent them from assembling to worship and organize to provide moral support. In such an environment, she says, women's collective capacity to address complex problems and lift society is vastly diminished, and individual hopes and aspirations are dashed. I have no question that as women and men work together to help us all have religious freedom, we are empowering all people. Religious freedom is especially empowering for women and children. Women and children are often marginalized, especially in countries or in areas in which religious freedom is not understood or accepted. When religious freedom exists in countries and communities, women are able to receive a good education. Children are able to receive a good education. Women are allowed to gather. Women are allowed to make and keep covenants. Women are able to be the moral compass. Women are able to become literate. They're able to help in decisions regarding law, regarding schools, regarding families. We have been told by our prophet that women are the moral compass. Women have innate spiritual gifts to be peacemakers. When religious freedom exists, women can use those innate spiritual gifts to not only help themselves, but to help children fulfill the measure of their creation. Without religious freedom, women are often neglected, degraded, diminished, abused, and children often are starving or not able to attend and receive a good education. Religious freedom allows every person, and especially women and children, to flourish as God permits and as God desires. President Johnson gives an invitation for all people when she says the following: "My call to action today is simple and personal. While we must act justly and responsibly in our roles as women leaders, let us not neglect the individuals within our immediate circle of care. I urge you to pause with me for a moment and connect, however you do that, with your highest source of inspiration, and then wait quietly for guidance about whose life you can meaningfully improve today with an act of compassion. Write it down," she says, "and do it." So with all of this, I simply want to encourage everyone listening to this podcast to understand more regarding the Constitution and also religious freedom. Here is a document from the BYU International Center for Law and Religious Studies that you can download for yourself. The first page gives 10 ways to protect religious freedom. They are: study up on the issues, speak up with courage and civility, get involved in political process, get to know other people of other faiths, volunteer for a charity, get involved in education, be part of a club, business group, or professional association, extend the reach of your faith, make it a family matter and a matter of prayer, and finally, use your voice on social media, but also learn to listen. I strongly encourage you to use this document to help you make decisions regarding religious freedom in your own life and how you can most effectively use the law in order to help people have greater freedom and fulfill the measure of their creation. I'd like to end with a quote that I read over and over again as I walked in Boston through a monument path that was there for us to remember the Holocaust and the freedom that people need and what happens when freedom is taken away. The poem is as follows: "First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me." I absolutely know and have experienced what it is to have rights taken away. I know what it looks like to have other people suffer. And as a woman and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a disciple of Christ, one thing that I want to do is to help all women and all men and all children of God fulfill the measure of their creation and become like Him. In order to do that best, we need religious freedom, and we need the rights and privileges and principles associated with the Constitution of the United States. These individuals in Missouri lost those opportunities. Let's do all we can to make sure we nor others ever lose the opportunities to fulfill the measure of our creation. Understanding and accessing and using and implementing the laws associated with religious freedom and the Constitution will help us become what our Father in heaven wants us to become. There is so much more to this topic of religious freedom and the Constitution. There's no way we can cover it here during this podcast, so I encourage you to study it as much as you can. You can find resources on the churchofjesuschrist.org and at BYU Law School and in other places as well. We would like, though, to continue on with our discussion of sections 98 to 101. And so we are going to invite our wonderful friend, Julene Judd, to join us at the table. We are so grateful to have our dear friend, Julene Judd, with us today. Julene, thank you for joining us at this table.
Thank you for having me. This is a holy, sacred space, and I'm so honored.
You know what? This is a sacred space. During COVID, this is where we would have our sacrament meeting, and it's just kind of taken the sacred space.
You can feel it.
Oh, thank you. We can feel it. Thank you for bringing that with you, too. Every person matters at this table in this home, so thank you, Julene.
I love that.
Julene, I just had the greatest experience watching you speak at Women's Conference at BYU just a few months ago. Julie, will you just tell us, did they give you the topic? Did you choose the topic? I mean, what can we ask?
Well, they gave me the assignment to introduce the theme, which was Walk With Me from Moses 6:34, and it ruined 3 months of my life. We could cut that part out.
You know, Julie, I actually appreciate you saying that, because sometimes people just give a talk, general conference, women's conference at BYU. It takes so much work.
Well, and it gave me a new appreciation for the general leaders and prophets and apostles and leaders. You see and hear about their schedule. I know that we don't realize how busy they really are, but to prepare an address or a conference talk and serve like they do, it gave me a new appreciation for their consecration and their sacrifice, because it was hard and scary.
And you turn it in, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's part of the hard thing too, is it's you're actually turning in a document before you get up there. They want it as polished as it can be before you speak.
To make sure that it's in alignment.
Absolutely.
That you want to be in alignment with the prophet. And so that was an important step and something I'd never done before.
Yeah.
I loved the teleprompter. No glasses, big words. I could see everything. That was like my favorite part that I didn't know would be my favorite part.
And they just kind of guide you through the teleprompter, huh? It's amazing how
rolls.
they can just do that.
I'm like, I want one for family night. We should have one here. It was so great.
Speaking at church on Sunday, teaching a gospel doctrine lesson. Yeah, just
have you used one? You've probably used one a lot.
Not a lot, but I've used it here. Oh, I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was
you know what I love about the teleprompter is they help me to slow down. Like if I start going really fast, they try to keep the cadence, but sometimes I've done it and you can tell they're like, we're going to help you slow down just a little bit. Yeah,
breathe.
It's been nice. Yes,
you're going to be all right.
Yes.
It's okay.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, Julie, you're married to your favorite person.
I am. He's the best part of me.
Oh, what is your husband's name?
Gary.
Oh, and you and Gary served in Africa together.
Yes, we did. We just got home last summer.
Oh my goodness. And 512 missionaries, is that right? Sons and daughters.
Yes.
In addition to everyone else,
sons and daughters. Yes, we have 5 of our own and 9 grandchildren, but now we have 512 other children who we love with all our hearts.
Oh, I can imagine. And the love they have for you, right?
Wow.
Oh, I'm very confident that is the case. From serving a mission myself, that mentoring and that example of those wonderful mission presidents, visitor center directors, et cetera, they really make a huge impact on the lives of these young adults.
And you're having a shared experience. It's something you've never done before and they've never done before. And together you really come to know the Savior in a way you hadn't before. And it was just a privilege to be part of that experience and watch these young people grow and develop. It was just they're amazing.
Well, and you served in Zimbabwe, the Harare mission, right? So you have a lot of experiences that are going to be different than what you were perhaps used to. I mean, you really were growing up in a number of ways, experiencing life with them. I
was so grateful for that experience, that word that President Nelson always used. I was so myopic in what I'd seen in my life experience, just I hadn't really seen other parts of the world yet. And so that was one of the greatest blessings, was being a part of the gathering and the hastening of the work in a place where the church is new. And it felt very similar to, that's why I love that we're studying the Doctrine and Covenants, because I see that, you see the things that these amazing saints experienced, And it's the same everywhere the church is new and growing. There are pioneers that are figuring it out and bringing culture and traditions and experiences and bringing it all together, saying, okay, now how do I navigate this and become a son or daughter and a child of the covenant? How do I do that? And it was just amazing.
Yeah, I know when I have interviewed for some international work that I've done in the past, I remember being in Mexico when they were transitioning the church school into the MTC, Mexico City, and thinking, wow, this is so similar to Kirtland right now.
Right.
Or, being in China with a few members of the church and just meeting a few and thinking, oh my goodness, Joseph Smith.
Yes.
I cannot imagine the beginning of the church and just a few followers there.
It gives you a whole new perspective and appreciation.
Absolutely. And you see the church growing all over the world. You see these temples being built, and you can't help but think, oh my goodness, the whole world is in Nauvoo. I mean, it sounds crazy, but there's just so many principles of the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the world that you can see in these early years of church history. It's amazing.
And if I could just do a commercial for senior missionaries, because I was raised in this pioneer belt. I raised and sent 5 missionaries. We served at the MTC for several years before we went. And I had no idea how important senior missionaries were, in part because a worldwide church that is new, senior missionaries specifically from the United States that have this institutional knowledge that we take for granted, that, oh, this is how a ward works. Oh, this is what happens. There's probably any young man or young woman in a ward close to here, if you threw a rock, they could, if something happened and the bishop didn't show up, they could pretty much run the day and say, oh, okay, no problem, we got this, will you do this? And this is what you do, and the sacrament, and let's get things. And they would just kind of know. Talks,
this is the prayer, now we do Sunday school.
They would know how the church operates.
Yeah.
And when you're in a place where the church is new, you take that for granted. And that they don't have that institutional knowledge. And so the senior missionaries, what they offer to a mission and to a worldwide church, just by showing up and being themselves, they don't have to feel like they're scriptorians or be worried about teaching the gospel and opening their mouths. Just being there and offering their life experience and their wisdom it's the heartbeat of a mission.
Oh yeah.
We couldn't do it without them. And we didn't have any senior missionaries. COVID, everybody went home.
Oh yeah.
And so that's just my little plug for senior missionaries. So please serve. You have no idea the good you will do.
Yeah, thank you. It takes us back to Elder Rasband's talk on serving missions,
Yes.
right? There have been many, but maybe recently is Elder Rasband's talk to those senior missionaries, and it seems like many more have joined. Speaking of many more joining, the languages going from English to Spanish and now French because of the African missions, right?
Largely in part of the Western African nations.
That is amazing. Well, Julene, if I understand right too, you're also working on a degree at BYU.
It's a journey. I'm trying. It's very difficult, but I'm trying to train my brain and be willing to do new things and learn new things.
Okay, well,
I think I could.
I'm going to give a shout out to older students, that if you so desire to go back and receive and gain further education as far as at a university or something, please do. I absolutely love in my classes when I have students that are older students who have experienced and can testify with me and share and mentor and help these other younger students. Oh, it's such a blessing. I can't tell you how many times I've appreciated the older women and men who have sat in my classes and helped answer questions or ask specific questions or testified or just their presence. I love it. So yeah, I recognize that it may be different. You may not have been in the classroom for a while, and it's a whole new world, but it is needed. So I hope you feel extremely comfortable, and I hope you know that you're probably not only educating yourself, but a lot of people are being educated along with you. Even the professors, maybe even especially the professors.
I loved it. And I shouldn't, 90% of it has been great. It's just the math. That's That's not so great.
It may not matter how old you are. The math may be hard depending.
Okay. Everything else is great.
Yeah, I have some statistic stories too that I could share.
Yeah.
That's great. Julene, we'd really like to start with asking you to define yourself or tell us who you are in terms of being a disciple of Christ. We've talked about you quite a bit here, but who are you in terms of being a disciple of Jesus Christ?
I think being a disciple for me is my missionary name tag, wearing the name of the Savior and trying to act and speak and do what he would do if he were here. And that shows up in how I speak, how I show up online, when I'm driving, in my most important relationships and also in my casual ones, is, am I reflecting his image? And even though I don't wear that tag anymore, I get to wear my garment every day, that it's a constant reminder of who I am trying to become and who I represent because of what I know and how I treat people and what he would do if he were here. That's the kind of disciple I'm trying to be.
Julene, I remember just talking to you multiple times on the phone and just asking questions and just seeing your desire to do what is right and learn what is right and then speak. And I appreciate that your discipleship may not be a name tag, but it's who you are. You are very clearly, your eyes, your countenance, your questions, your willingness to serve is a clear sign of a disciple. So thank you.
I'm trying. I'm a slow learner.
All right, ready to jump in here?
Yes,
Let's get into these scriptures. These sections are so good. As we start out, we're going to jump right in first to section 98. 98, we're talking some serious persecution, some political, economic, cultural, religious. There's a lot going on here. Can you guide us through here a little bit, Julene?
And I think it's important to recognize in these sections is that the saints as a whole are separated from their prophet.
Yeah.
He is with some of the saints in Kirtland, but they are behind in Missouri. What they thought was Zion, what they thought would always be Zion, but they're having a very different experience. So that's an important part of what we're talking about today. In section 100 and 101, we learn more about missionary work, and then we're still focusing on this ability of the power of a seer and learning the law of forgiveness. The only way forward is through the atonement of Jesus Christ. And I think those are, and we see patterns in section 101, and taught to act in doctrine and using our agency to choose how we react in really difficult circumstances, especially when it's not what we thought it would be.
Oh, that is so true, that's one of our topics today. Let's jump into the first one, if that's okay, if prophets can see around corners. And if it's okay, I'm just going to read just a little bit about the history at this time. There's so much more, but we talked about this political instability, section 98, and I love that you talked about these two areas, Missouri and Kirtland, and we're going to be in this for a while, right? This Kirtland, Missouri area.
And could I add? I think it's important that they've just been given instruction to build the temple in Kirtland.
Yes.
And so it makes sense that with that light that is about to flood the earth and the most important temple, the most important time to restore these ordinances and covenants that will bless all of us, it makes sense that the adversary is right there and they are getting the full brunt of it.
Oh, I love that you tied that in. I mean, we just finished section 97, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Reading that as a whole body of members of the church. I hope that we see that when the Lord is commanding something good, whether it's family or prayer or temples being built or missionary work, we just need to expect. Right?
Don't be surprised by it.
Just wait for it, Right? It's almost like, oh, there you are.
Yes, and there's a pattern that you can recognize.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you see it for what it is, you can manage it.
Yes, and I think that's one of the reasons why we need prophets so badly, is just we need them to see around these corners. We need them to guide us.
Yes.
So this is July 20th, 1833. W.W. Phelps, other church leaders are finally called upon by the local mobs, and they're basically said, we're going to destroy the city, and you have 15 minutes. W.W. Phelps asked for 30 days. I mean, I can't even imagine. This is going to lead into the purpose of Zion's camp coming later, and eventually it's going to be the extermination order. I mean, this is serious. We're going to have Edward Partridge, who is going to be tarred and feathered, and we can talk about that a little bit later as well. But Joseph isn't aware of this.
No.
But yet he's receiving this revelation from the Lord. And that's why I think this first one is the power of a seer.
Yes.
is kind of how you saw this. Prophets can see around the corner. This is real. As members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe that prophets do receive revelation and guidance from God, and they are to speak for God for the whole world. And we believe that, right?
Yes, we do. And the faith that it takes to trust in the words of a living prophet when we may not understand all of the reasons or the why behind it. It's significant that they were separated from their prophet in section 98. It's focusing on the trials and some of the really difficult things that especially the women experienced.
We so often talk about the doctrines and principles and then the them, there, and then, and here, now, and us, right?
Oh, I
so
love that.
This idea of the prophets being able to see around corner, and Joseph Smith obviously receiving a revelation that is going to be guiding and affecting them. I love this. You know, Sherry Dew has a book recently that's titled "Prophets Can See Around Corners,"
Yes.
right? I actually did an interview with Sherry a few years ago where she was talking about the Family Proclamation, which, as I think about it, the Family Proclamation was almost 30 years ago it came out. September of 1995. So we're right there, 30-year anniversary.
I was there singing in the choir in that General Women's Meeting
Are you serious?
when the proclamation was given.
I interviewed Elaine Jack about the Family Proclamation. And she told me that one of the experiences that stood out to her more than any other was on that day of September of 1995, the beautiful faces of the choir members. She said that after, and she's now passed, I love her so much.
I do too.
She said after the meeting was over, she turned around and just looked, and the faces of the choir members and their beautiful angelic voices, she just said that is one of the greatest memories of that whole day. Just amazing.
Really?
Yes, the choir members. You saying that just all of a sudden it just brings it in. In the interview, though, she also talked about the meeting that she had with President Hinckley. They had actually put together a video that she just said that she didn't really feel good about showing. But if they didn't use the video, it would take out 10 minutes of time, and they didn't have 10 minutes to fill. President Hinckley at the time had this wonderful presidency, Relief Society presidency, come meet with him. Elaine said that she actually invited President Hinckley to speak at that meeting. And he asked her permission if that would be okay. And she said, we would love to have you speak at the meeting. In fact, she said this: President Hinckley asked us how we felt the women were doing and how their family was doing. What did they think about the curriculum for women? This was a wonderful opportunity, she wrote, for us to speak about the circumstances we had found. Each of us contributed from our own perspective. I was able to make a plea for the curriculum of the women. Cheiko Okazaki, spoke about the many who were hurting, and Eileen spoke about the many women's concerns being their families and economic circumstances. She then said, we felt very satisfied and listened to and warmly received. Then she talked about this discussion that she actually had with the first presidency and spoke specifically about her discussion with President Hinckley. And she said, he talked about a proclamation on families that had been worked on by the first presidency and the Quorum of the 12. He said, I don't know if there would be time to give this. She then said, we hastily assured him that there was plenty of time and that we could each give up more time if needed. We told him how pleased we would be to have him read such a proclamation, and then explained he really wanted to reach all the women, and it was an ideal time for all the women to be together. So she really had this time that needed to be filled. President Hinckley had this proclamation that he was ready to deliver, and the timing, it was just this perfect timing.
Heavenly orchestration.
Yes. And if I'll just share this, when I was interviewing Sister Sherry do about this, she actually made the comment. She said one of the things that she had learned at that time was a quote that she had heard from Elder Nielsen before this, where he said, when I think about the family proclamation, it's a testimony that prophets really can see around corners. And Elaine Jaggs said this similar thing to me. Barb, the proclamation to the family shows that prophets can see around corners.
I have a testimony of that. I also love that Sister Jack kept such a detailed journal so that we have this amazing woman's voice giving another perspective to that amazing meeting. I also have a confession.
Please.
That prophets see around corners, and the older I get, the more important this proclamation has become to me. When I was singing in that choir, I was young. I was married and a young mother, but I also remember being not distracted, but I was kind of dazed by the thought, oh, I'm in the tabernacle. Oh, look, there's President Hinckley. Oh, did my family make it? Is my dress gonna be, and I was distracted in things that weren't necessarily what the Spirit was teaching and what was happening that night. But over time, as I have learned and read and studied the proclamation, that was actually my favorite class so far at BYU.
Wow.
Was studying about the proclamation and visiting with other young single adults in my class about identity and children of the covenant and
wow,
the atonement of Jesus Christ. And I'm so grateful for a prophet who sees around corners and knew 30 years ago that these would be the issues facing my family right now, that we need a prophet and we need truth and a steady and solid way forward. The only safe way forward is living in alignment with a living prophet of God. I know that that's true.
Oh, that is so good. And you know what? In her writing about this moment, she just recognized so clearly the prophet's hand in the decision for him to read this proclamation at this women's conference. But she said this in her journal. She said, when the proclamation was read on Saturday evening, it was worthy of all that had been said of it. It will be a fine foundational document for us in Relief Society and for the church as a whole. I mean, this is September of 1995 that she is writing this. And she, as the General Relief Society of the church, could see the future and how clear the prophetic statements were. She was so aligned with President Hinckley in that first presidency at that time. And she was receiving personal revelation to how to create that meeting with the authority that she had and the power that she had.
Yes.
She was able to align with the prophet. I mean, it was just, to me, when you listen to Elaine Jack talk about the family proclamation, and you listen to her talk about her testimony of President Hinckley and President Oaks, who was in that meeting, and President Monson and President Faust, these were the ones that she had talked to at that moment. She was weeping in my interview with her, just talking about how much love and appreciation she had and how clearly prophets could see around corners. It was amazing.
And I love her testimony of the power of the priesthood, because here is just a portion of what she says, that she said related to this from Daughters in My Kingdom. She said, I have a firm testimony of the power of the priesthood in the life of all church members. And she talks about the Doctrine and Covenants and the Melchizedek priesthood specifically, and the keys that were given at this time that we're talking about. And then she said, specifically for the sisters, treasure our opportunity to be full partakers of the spiritual blessings of the priesthood. She knew it and she saw it then, in part because she was in alignment with a prophet and a seer and a revelator. That's where she got her power and her faith and her confidence. And it wasn't without pain and wrestle and what she says in her journal.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, she still had to stretch. She still had to learn. She still had to make decisions. And she was making some very serious decisions that time. We're talking, the 1990s and all that was happening in the world and so many of these things. I know you and I, we look back at the Family Proclamation at the time, it was not that big of a deal. And I know many of our listeners will think the same thing.
It didn't feel that way at the moment.
Yes.
But now, right?
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Julene. A lot of times I tell my students, it wasn't that big of a deal, or we all just kind of knew it. But at the same time, what's interesting is I can remember exactly where I was sitting and who I was with when I heard it.
That's true.
So as much as it didn't really seem to matter because we kind of agreed at the time, it mattered enough that I don't know that I can remember for most general conferences exactly where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing when I heard it. Right?
And wasn't this like the first, if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't this like the first broadcast of its kind?
Yeah, yes.
It was significant in so many ways. And all of these things that came into play and in alignment, I think specifically for this message from God.
Yeah, and we see it differently today too. I remember Elaine talking about how there was actually they had paid for satellite time, right? And so they paid for a certain amount of time and they needed to fill that time. And so even just having this and the letter, there was a letter, if you go back and read the Family Proclamation right before this, President Hinckley reads a letter from this woman. And he just says he wanted to make sure that women, whether they were single, whether they were married, he read this letter about the struggles of women that have in the church, and he was very authentic about it. And then he says, because of this, I want to read to you a proclamation to the world on the family, right? I mean, just perfectly aligned. And Elaine Jack, and this time it was new to the world what she was doing. It was just incredible.
Well, and how it ties into a prophet seeing around the corner. Today in a worldwide church, and what we're seeing, what we experienced in Africa and anywhere the hastening and the gathering has happened, there is doctrine, important doctrine, that is the bedrock of society. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in section 101, but it talks specifically about the role of men and women in families and being created in the image of God, and our responsibility that if you want to save a people or a country or a constitution, you save a family.
In verse 16 of section 98, I think it's so interesting that we're talking about war, and we're talking about people mourning, and we're talking about all that is happening, and the Lord is saying, wait patiently upon me. And I love also in verse 3, therefore he giveth his promise unto you with an immutable covenant. I actually had to look up the word immutable. It's like unchanged. You did?
Yes.
Isn't that such I looked at the 1828. I'm actually going to.
I did too.
Did you really? Do you have it there? I'm going to
No.
So here it is. I'll give it to you. It
Okay.
says immutable. This is 1828 Webster's Dictionary, means invariable, unalterable, not capable or susceptible of change.
Yes.
And then they actually use Hebrews chapter 6, verse 18, that by two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to lie, we might have strong consolation. I mean, and I love it. So I love how they're having all of this difficulty, and the Lord is reminding us that we need to make sure that in the future that we have honest and wise men, and I'll add women in politics, that we seek for them diligently and we observe to uphold them. This is verse 10. Otherwise, whatsoever is less than these cometh of evil. So he brings in this politics and things. And then verse 16, therefore renounce war and proclaim peace. Right? And seek diligently to turn the hearts of the children to their fathers, and the hearts of the fathers to the children. Then he goes right to the temple. Right. So he's talking about, yes, there are all these problems, and as they're dealing with war and people are being treated poorly. We need to focus on the things that are eternal.
And it's that spiritual momentum that President Nelson taught, and in fact, I wrote in my margin that followers of Christ should set the example for the world to follow. That's our call as disciples, and we can do that with confidence. I actually did write that in my margin, not capable of change, and I also wrote gravity. You can't fight gravity. It's that kind of immutable promise.
I love that President Hinckley back in the day, has asked us that, he said to us, we are a peaceful people, right? We need to be a peaceful people. And then in our day, President Nelson, how many times has he talked about being a peacemaker, right? I love this. He says, now as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, what does the Lord expect of us? As a church, we must renounce war and proclaim peace. As individuals, we should follow after things which make for peace. We should be personal peacemakers. We should live peacefully as couples, families, and neighbors. We should live by the golden rule. We have writings of the descendants of Judah as now merged with writings of the descendants of Ephraim. We should employ them and expand our circle of love to embrace the whole human family. We should bring divine love and revealed doctrines of restored religion to our neighbors and friends. We should serve them according to our abilities and our opportunities. We should keep our principles on a high level and stand for the right. We should continue to gather scattered Israel from all four corners of the earth and offer the ordinances and covenants that seal families together forever. These blessings we are to bring to people of all nations. By so living, he says, our master will bless us. He provided this promise: fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God, and I will strengthen thee. I will help thee. I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. As we're looking at this and talking about prophets seeing around corners, we have a prophet today, Julene, who sees around corners. And we will continue to have prophets as long as we are on this earth, to have prophets who are seeing around corners, because they are God's spokesman, and God sees around corners. God sees the whole earth,
Yes,
let
he
alone the
does.
corners, right?
And I love that he quoted, you hear the language from the prophet in hymn 85, fear not, I am with thee, about this how firm a foundation. And I'm so grateful for the lives of these saints that we can look to as an example of how they lived in a very difficult circumstance where peace was not what they were experiencing as a community.
Yeah.
And just their faith and what they sacrificed.
No, I agree. There's so much of a sacrifice here. And in fact, I think of this parable in section 101, the parable of this watchman. I think it's interesting because the Lord, here he is trying to save his people. He's trying to help them create and build Zion. And then he's going to talk to them about this parable of the watchman. And it's so interesting because you see in this parable of the watchman, these individuals, the watchman says, the Lord of the vineyard says, we need you to build this fence, and we need you to do all these things in order to protect these olive trees. And there's so much symbolism going on here. Mm-hmm. But I love this where the Lord of the vineyard is speaking and telling them exactly what they should do. And we need to build a tower, and we need to have a watchman on top of this tower. This is verse 45 of section 101. But then this. Now the servants of the nobleman went and did as their Lord commanded them, and planted the olive trees, and built a hedge round about, and set watchmen, and began to build the tower. Notice, and began to build the tower. And while they were yet laying the foundation thereof, they began to say among themselves, and what need hath my Lord for this tower? And he consulted for a long time, saying among themselves, what need hath my Lord for this tower, seeing this is a time of peace? Might not this money be given to the exchangers? For there is no need of these things. And while they were at variance one with another, they became very slothful, and they hearkened not unto the commandments of the Lord. And the enemy came by night and broke down the hedge, and the servants of the nobleman arose and were affrighted and fled. And the enemy destroyed their works and broke down the olive trees. Now behold, a nobleman, the Lord of the vineyard, called upon his servants and said unto them, why? What is the cause of this great evil? I just think it's so fascinating here, where you have this person saying, build this tower. He's doing it for the benefit of saving all these people. Mm-hmm. He can see beyond, he can see around these corners. He's asking them to please be obedient and do these things. Right. And yet they have more to do. And they question him.
They start to wonder.
Yeah.
And then they get distracted. And because they're having these conversations with each other. They don't have the vision that a prophet or a seer does. We thought we were building Zion. You sent us here. We're supposed to build Zion, and there's this persecution. It's not going quite how they pictured it in their mind. Is that part of this parable?
I think so. I think a lot of times things don't go the way we would like things to happen. And so therefore we start wondering if there's something wrong with the prophet or something wrong with the church or something wrong with our local leaders or something wrong with our parents, right? There's this great quote by Elder Maxwell. He's talking about wheat and tares, but I think it goes really well with this gathering in. In verse 65, therefore I must gather together my people according to the parable of the wheat and the tares. that the wheat may be secured in the garners to possess eternal life. And Elder Bednar teaches that the garners are the temple, right?
Yes.
And be crowned with celestial glory when I shall come in the kingdom of my Father to reward every man according as his work shall be. Elder Maxwell says this, kind of to your point. He says this: church members will live in this wheat and tare situation until the millennium. And actually, he's talking about the millennium in this section as well. Some real tares even masquerade as wheat, including the few eager individuals who lecture the rest of us about church doctrines in which they no longer believe. They criticize the use of church resources to which they no longer contribute. They condescendingly seek to counsel the brethren whom they no longer sustain. Confrontive, except of themselves, of course, they leave the church, but they cannot leave the church alone. And then he says this: years ago, I wondered over the scriptural imagery of the angels waiting day and night for the great command to come down and reap the tares in a wicked and suffering world. It seemed rather eager to me. Given such massive, needless human suffering, I don't wonder anymore. Even so, the final reaping will occur only when the Father determines that the world is fully ripe. Meanwhile, brothers and sisters, Elder Maxwell continues, the challenge is surviving spiritually in a deteriorating wheat and tares world. Granted, occasionally a few defectors or descendants may try to vex us as they hyperventilate over their particular concerns. But it is the engulfing effects of that deteriorating world on church members which is the clear and present danger. Evils and designs really do operate through conspiring individuals in these last days. The Lord has even announced, behold, the enemy is combined. Then finally he says, we must not be intimidated or lose our composure, even though the once morally unacceptable is being acceptable, as his frequency somehow conferred respectability. I mean, you just see this idea of this wheat and the tares and what's happening to these people here. The prophets, again, sometimes we may think, what are they thinking? Is Jesus Christ, I mean, how many times has President Nelson told us to prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ? And people will say, well, we've been hearing that from prophets for years. Well, President Nelson is saying it more often and more commonly, and it doesn't matter. He's the prophet. He's asking us to gather Israel. He's asking us to be peacemakers. And that doesn't mean we're blindly following. I want to make that very clear,
yes.
Right?
Well, and I think the danger is that we all look alike.
Yeah.
The wheat and the tares, it looks the same.
Yeah.
And that's why personal revelation and having the Spirit with us is so important, to differentiate between the voices of the world and following a living prophet, even when we don't understand completely. We may look at the tower and wonder, now, what is this? Just like those verses that you read. But it's trusting in the vision of a prophet and of a Savior, and not leaning to my own myopic view.
Absolutely. To trust in the Lord, that
Yes.
his ways really are higher than my ways, and he has a prophet that really can see. Right? I mean, to know that. Mm-hmm. Julene, we better go on to our next topic. What do you think? Okay, we're going to talk about our next topic, which is embracing the unexpected. And I know, as we tie these into the scriptures, that you have had many opportunities in your life to embrace the unexpected.
Yes.
So what do we mean by embracing the unexpected here?
It comes to light in these sections for me, because you have these beautiful saints who have joined the church and believe and have been called to build Zion. And so that's what they thought that they were doing. And then they start to face all of this persecution. And not the temptation, but the reality is, oftentimes, reality is not what we expect. And you can lay that template on top of serving a mission, going back to school, getting married, parenthood, almost any circumstance, wherever we have an expectation.
Yeah.
Rarely does it work out that way. I think sometimes in those situations, the temptation is, I know for me personally, is to say, okay, Heavenly Father, do you see me? This is not what I was expecting, and this is really difficult. Are you there? Am I where I'm supposed to be? I start to doubt
Yeah.
a lot of things. I think that's a natural tendency. And a couple of things that I loved about this story is I think that he shares with us in the scriptures that you already shared back in the beginning of 98, that you are my friends. My friend, fear not. Let your hearts be comforted. And in everything, give thanks. And if you cleave to the good and live by my word, I will continue to lead you along, line upon line, precept on precept. Just trust me. I'm right here. And I love that sweet story I actually read in Saints when studying for this section. So they're on the banks of the Missouri. They've been forced violently from their homes. As you mentioned, several have been tarred and feathered. They've been beaten, traumatized, scared, especially the women. And they're on the banks of the Missouri. And I imagine them asking that same question, is that, okay, this does not look like this is not Zion. This is not how I pictured it would go in my mind.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, in the midnight sky, this beautiful meteor shower that history records, that it wasn't just a star here and there, but that it was just this, it filled the sky, the night sky, with lights. They were so numerable that they were like snowflakes, and it lasted for several hours, and that it filled the sky and the saints with light.
Wow.
And a reminder. It was just kind of like Heavenly Father saying, I'm right here. I see you. I know it's hard, but it's going to be okay. We had that personal experience in the first several weeks and months of our mission. I thought I knew what going on a mission would be like, but it wasn't anything like I expected. And we were just kind of reeling from the experience, adjusting to culture, and then seeing a lot of really difficult things. And I was wondering, do you see me? Do you see us? This really hard thing. And we were driving, and we hadn't been I downloaded all my playlists because music's really important to me, and it's my go-to.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get anything to work because of the connectivity. We could get one song on all of my playlists to play, and it was Consider the Lilies.
Oh, I love that
and
song.
So we played that on loop over and over and over again for the first several months of our mission, in our home, in the car, when we're driving and visiting and handling some different situations, and kind of reconciling what I thought a mission was and what a mission really ended up being, because it's all the things. It's the Call to Serve video. It's the cover of the Liahona magazine. It's the power and the majesty of God, and seeing and being a part of this glorious hastening. But it's also really difficult, and I think every missionary would tell you that.
Yeah.
And it's this beautiful opportunity to come to know the Savior in a very personal way. So we've been listening to this song, and the third verse felt like Africa to me, and what I was trying to reconcile. This, consider the sweet, tender children who must suffer on the earth, and the pains of all of them he carried from the day of his birth. So these are the words we're listening to over and over. And I was just really struggling on this particular afternoon. And we're driving after a rainstorm, and I look out into the field, and I said, stop, turn around. And turning around isn't really that easy on the road in Africa. But he turned around, and we went back and drove by this field again. And I still wasn't sure. We turned around and drove again and kind of went off road and down into this marsh, out in the middle of this field. And there were the most beautiful white lilies. And that was just kind of my own meteor shower, my own little message from Heavenly Father saying, it's okay. I'm right here. Don't leave me. Stay here. Stay with me. I will lead you along. And I think that's an important message that we learn from these saints, that they were faithful. They remembered that immutable covenant. They believed him and just took that next step.
Your mission in going to Africa and considering these children reminds me so much of Section 98 with John Murdoch. If I could just share a couple of things and the unexpected. There are so many things that we can learn and understand about him and kind of his experiences. And first of all, he's still going through all these struggles. And as you pointed out to me earlier,
Yes.
What does the Lord do?
Gives him the best companion. He's grieving. He's just lost his wife. He's passed off his twins, one of whom we know will die soon. He's separated from 3 other children. Another daughter, Phoebe, also dies. He has so much loss in his life, and he's grieving. But he still says, yes, here I am, send me. And who does God give him as his companion? He gives him Hiram Smith.
It's crazy.
It's just this tender mercy that, again, if we choose joy in adversity, if we look to him, if we focus on the atonement of Jesus Christ, through him receive the mercy and grace and strength, he will show up in every circumstance and every experience. And I love that God gave John Murdoch Hiram Smith.
I cannot agree more. And I love in Section 99 of this Doctrine and Covenants, behold, thus saith the Lord unto my servant John Murdoch, thou art called to go into the eastern countries from the house to house, from village to village, from city to city, to proclaim mine everlasting gospel unto the inhabitants thereof in the midst of persecution and wickedness. Amidst all the persecution and wickedness, John, I want you to go teach the gospel. There was more than just persecution and wickedness happening here. As you said, it's his life. I mean, this is what he says in his mission journal. He says, I arrived in Ohio in the church in the month of June, about 12 months after leaving my children. I arrived there about the 1st of June, found my little son Joseph had died. I had left my oldest son Oris with Benjamin Bragg and John with Philo Judd and Phoebe with Cyrenus Burnett. I had to pay them all full price for keeping my children during my absence, but my daughter was still doing well with brother Joseph the prophet. I mean, you think about what's happening during this period of time and what he's being called to do. Then he continues this. I then continued with the church, preaching to them and strengthening them and regaining my health till the month of August, when I received the revelation recorded in the Book of Commandments, which is this one here. I immediately again began to arrange my business and provide for my children and send them up to the bishop in Zion, which I did. You just think about all that he was being asked to do and the difficulty of what's happening. I mean, some of these children that he loses his own daughter. The Book of Mormon and the doctrine we taught, we bore testimony according to the commandment, and the Lord helped us in tending to the ordinances. I mean, he's having a hard mission.
Right.
His family is struggling at home. His wife has passed away. His son dies in the home of the prophet. But yet John Murdoch continues on. If there is a reason to struggle with the church, a reason to struggle with the prophet, John Murdoch had every possible excuse to struggle and to even leave. But the Lord continues to stay with him. And I love in verse 6, your children are provided for. And verse 8, otherwise thou shalt continue to proclaim my gospel until thou be taken. I mean, the sacrifice of John Murdoch and the love that he has, just is so incredible to me.
And in the midst of all that adversity, I think Heavenly Father knew and understood the difficulty on a level that we don't. But I love that how in verse 7 and 8, he still honors his agency. He said, if thou desirest of me, thou mayest go up also into the goodly land to possess thine inheritance. In other words, you can stay with your family, or you can continue proclaiming my gospel. Both are noble options. You can choose. I love that he honored that agency.
I think because he's choosing so righteously, he has some extremely sacred experiences as well. He has this, again, in his journal, he writes this, I saw the form of a man, most lovely. The visage of his face was sound and fair as the sun. His hair a bright silver gray, curled in the most majestic form. His eyes a keen penetrating blue, and the skin of his neck a most beautiful white. And he was covered from the neck to his feet with a loose garment, pure white, whiter than any garment I have ever before seen. His countenance was most penetrating and yet most lovely. That was from his own journal, and it happened during the time of 1832 to 33, which is when this is written.
Right when this was written.
I mean, he's being asked to do so much, and so you're talking about the unexpected and these expectations, but the Lord blesses him. The Lord blesses him even with a vision of the Savior as he's giving his life to the Lord and losing so much of his own. I love in 1854, just so you know, he's ordained then a patriarch by Heber C. Kimball. And over that next few years, he gave so many
And he actually buried, I think, 4 wives.
Oh my goodness, is that right?
He knows grief.
Yeah.
And his health also suffered. Missions were difficult, and he struggled with poor health for several of those years because of exposure and other experiences that he had with his companion in the mission field.
Well, and you know what else is interesting to me? I mean, he gives up these children, and being an adoptive mother of my own beautiful daughters, I think of the blessing for Emma to have Julia. I mean, her own mother passes away, but what a blessing for Emma to be able to have lost these 2 children, but to raise them. She loses the son, but Julia stays and takes care of Emma for the rest of her life.
Devoted.
She's just devoted. I love this statement. She's writing. She's away for a little while, visiting family and things, and she writes this in a letter to Emma. I often think of you all I can, assure you, and dream of you, for you are never out of my thoughts, my dear mother. And I sometimes imagine I can see you all as I left you. The last time I saw you, the boys were in the north room and you were in the front desk and Joseph was beside the gate. Every night I breathe a prayer to God to grant that we all might meet again in this world. I mean, just beautiful. She talks to her and writes to her as her dear mother. And then she often will sign her letters, your affectionate daughter, or your loving and affectionate daughter. I just, this love that Julia gave, and this
that
friendship
came from the pain and sacrifice of Brother Murdoch.
Yep.
That used this beauty for ashes, that God was comforting Emma and gave her this blessing at great cost to John Murdoch.
At a great cost. Julene, as we finish today, we often ask the question, what have you learned for yourself? What have you learned for yourself in the study of the Doctrine and Covenants today, especially these sections?
I'm so grateful for this invitation. And as I thought about that, I have learned that I can trust him. And I was drawn to the words of the prophet in the proclamation on the restoration of the fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the bicentennial proclamation to the world that he offered during conference in COVID on April 5th, 2020. And he was standing in the grove, and we were listening to this beautiful proclamation, and I was drawn to these words, and I think this is what I've learned. We gladly declare that the promised restoration goes forward through continuing revelation. The earth will never again be the same, as God will gather together in one all things in Christ. With reverence and gratitude, we as his apostles invite all to know, as we do, that the heavens are open. We affirm that God is making known his will for his beloved sons and daughters. He did it in a proclamation 30 years ago. He did it in the Book of Commandments for the saints. He's doing it for me and my family. He's doing it for all of us because he loves us. And it's all by, in, and through our Savior, Jesus Christ. By him and through him and of him. He is the living Christ. And I'm so grateful and will live my life every day trying to live in a way that he can trust me because I trust him.
Thank you, Julene. I believe that is what he is expecting and wanting and desiring of all of us, to trust him, right? As we go through this, and he will. And the blessings, I believe, are going to be many, unexpected in that next life, and also now.
Yes,
how many
it's a
unexpected
happy
blessings.
thing.
Yes,
it's a blessing.
It is. There's so much more that we could talk about and so much more we can learn. One thing that's been on my mind a lot lately is religious freedom. And I look at this Constitution we didn't get into as much, but I do invite you and myself and others to be really studying this Constitution, study what the Lord has asked of Latter-day Saints today, and especially as women, to be the moral compass in the world.
Well, and could I close with that phrase from the Proclamation on the Family? We call upon responsible citizens and officers of government everywhere to promote those measures designed to maintain and strengthen the family as the fundamental unit of society. That's what religious freedom does.
They were fighting for their families.
They were.
Just as the days of Captain Moroni was fighting for his family.
And so are we.
Yes, Moroni is fighting for his family. Mormon's fighting for his family. Adam and Eve are fighting for their families. Esther was fighting for her family. Mary's fighting for her family. We are fighting for our families. And not just families now, but families for eternity. It is a real fight. It is a real battle. And the Lord will continue to fight our battles as we continue to put him first. He'll save our families. I know that that is true.
Amen.
Julene, thank you so much. Thank you for all the work that you have done on so many levels. Thank you for serving a full-time mission. Thank you for accepting mission calls. Thank you for being a mother. Thank you for being a scriptorian. Thank you for studying and teaching us today. I really appreciate your help.
Thank you. We're sisters in this beautiful family
We sure are.
of God.
We are. It's a family of God. We appreciate you so much being here as well. We are all part of this family. We're part of this great gathering of God's children that he is bringing together on this earth, this covenant Israel that is being gathered now. We encourage you to continue to study these scriptures. We encourage you to follow the invitation of President Nelson to be a part of this great gathering that is happening and to recognize that he is always with us in this process. There are so many blessings to come. We also invite you to continue to follow the prophet. He really does see around corners. He is God's spokesman on the earth. We'll see you again next week on Grounded.